All right, folks, just about ready to get started here. About 40 seconds to go. And hello, everybody, and welcome to the August 30th edition of the live chat. I'm Big Paulie coming to you live and in Cullivy Wheel on this rainy August 30th here in the Tampa, St. Petersburg area. It's been raining on and off all afternoon and now into the early evening. Hope you're all okay wherever you are. As I often say in my videos, wherever you are and whenever you see this, hope all is well with you. Just did a HTFL game that you'll be seeing on the 3rd, Thursday, between St. Louis and San Francisco. I'll just give you a hint. It was a good one. It was a very good game between those two teams. And you'll be seeing a lot of HTFL action this week that I have already taped because I don't know what my work schedule is going to be. I was supposed to go back to Walmart last week, but they have you do these apps on your phone where they tell you, they ask you, did you have this and this condition 10 days ago? Like, I go very long stretches of time between vomiting. Not to get the show off to a disgusting start tonight, but I am live, right? Okay. Yeah, just kind of check because I'm talking to myself right now. And although we have just started the chat, I go long times between vomiting. I've gone presidential terms in between vomits. And about a week and change ago, a week ago Thursday, I woke up and I had a couple of vomits. And they tell you, because Walmart and a lot of companies too, I think this would be true. They're so concerned about people catching COVID in their stores, they ask, all these questions that you wouldn't normally have to ask. And one of the questions they asked, well, did you vomit in the last 10 days? Yes. And now it's like, oh, we might have to send you to a doctor because this was the second time. I had a runny nose the first time I attempted to work for Walmart, and they docked me a couple of weeks. So we're going through that again, although I'm going to do the app tomorrow and I should be eligible. Hopefully I don't have to go to the doctors because I know it's not COVID. I know it's not COVID that I have. I got sick on 2 different occasions about 5-6 weeks apart, and I know that nothing else has happened to me. Of course, COVID is still gripping the sports world, still gripping the colleges and the universities as college football is attempting to start. This would have been the first week of the college football season. And that did not come to pass, of course, due to COVID. They're going to try playing the NFL in a couple of weeks. That is still on, even though they have not played any preseason games this year in 2020. And of course, we had some would call it a spectacle of what happened in Wisconsin and how that has gripped the sports world and how teams refuse to play. I'm kind of wondering how the sports world's going to look in a couple of years, maybe 1 year, maybe 5, maybe 10, if the politics of the real world keeps interrupting along with COVID, the sports that we see every day. And no, I am not an advocate for teams shutting up and playing. Oh, NFL starts in 2 weeks. Oh yeah, kayfabe totals NWA. I know. It starts in 2 weeks. It's still on schedule to start in a couple of weeks. How you doing, bud? They're still scheduled to start in a couple of weeks, but I'm just kind of wondering, what's up, Paulie? That is Arnold Hunter. Thank you very much for dropping in, Arnold. This is kind of like doing a live chat's kind of like the Field of Dreams movie with Kevin Costner. You build it, they come. And you just start talking chat, and people will will show up, and I kind of like that actually. Good, thanks, says Kayfabe. Yeah, what's going on with the political world? I kind of, and I'm not advocating you voting one way or another. I have my opinion, but you're totally welcome to your own, and I totally respect it. Come November, I want you to vote, no matter who you vote for. Okay, you vote for one guy, you vote for the other guy. It's not, we'll see. This is how we decide who leads our country, and I don't want to see anything happening to that. And I don't want to see the sports world becoming a political tool for one side or the other. And I think things have shifted a little to one extreme right now with what went on. And yeah, it's sad that this keeps going on in our world. What happened in Kenosha, but this has been happening in our world a long time. We're supposed to stop the world every time an unfortunate situation, as what happened in Kenosha takes place. We're going to stop the sports world every time something like this happens. I'm old enough, because I'm going to be 49 a week from today, to remember I was working in radio when the Rodney King thing happened in Los Angeles. I was working for a nationally syndicated talk show. A guy by the name of Stan Major, who was a big name down in South Florida, and he came up to do his syndicated show out of Tampa for a stretch and worked for the network I worked at. I was a 20-year-old board op for a nationally known talk show host. And one of the things that happened when I was doing the show was that spring was the Rodney King riots, and they had to move events that were taking place in Los Angeles to other cities. I think the Clippers were in the playoffs that year, and they moved to Anaheim. And I think the Lakers had to move a playoff game of theirs to Las Vegas. And things like that, obviously, that's going to happen in the sports world. But I'm kind of not looking forward to a future of sports where everything's going to grind to a halt because we have a social justice issue that we must deal with. And it's okay to be an advocate for social justice. Just, let's play the games like we always did. And I'm just kind of wondering what the future of sports is going to look like if we continue on this vein. We're going to have seasons without the logical endings, like we had the college basketball season with no champion, and we are trying to find months too late the NBA season and the NHL season's champions. So I'm just kind of wondering what's the sports world going to look like if you piss off half the people that follow your teams, and maybe you get half of those half back, and what are you going to do with 25% less of your fan base? Militias are starting to stir paintball caravans in Portland. Well, Portland's another part of what's been going on, and I should have mentioned Portland as I did Kenosha. But I'm not trying to get too political here. Like I said, I don't care what your political beliefs are. I'm just here for the games. I'm just here for the sports gaming universe that all of you create. I was looking at something somebody put up on YouTube a few months ago, and it was Howard Cosell. This was back at the twilight of Cosell's career in 1990s. This was right before he wrote his last book, and it was called What's Wrong with Sports. And he did a keynote speech for a radio organization, and he did it out of Washington, D.C. And he was very well versed even then. In fact, I'm going to drop the link to it here in the chat. And is paintball the future of sports, kayfabe? Could be. Paintball has a lot of social distancing in it. But yeah, Cosell was right. He was an advocate even in the twilight of his career. He was talking about what was the big thing in the summer of 1990, which was the Two Live Crew rap band getting banned in Broward County, Florida. They were saying the lyrics to their music was too obscene. And when's the last time you heard of a band getting banned for obscenity? really hasn't happened since. And they really made an example of Two Live Crew, who back when I went to high school was the rage. They had that song called "Me So Horny." That was a big hit, and they were being persecuted. And Cosell, if you watch that speech, he said, "You can't fight every issue. You have to pick it. You have to, choose your shots. You just can't pick every social justice case that is out there." And if you watch that keynote speech that he gives in DC, I think this was like August of 1990, 30 years ago this month, he says, just, be careful. Be careful. You don't want to cry wolf too many times. That was the gist of what I got. And Howard Cosell got it. And we wish he was still around 30 years later, but of course he passed away in 1995. He was a great voice of reason in the sports world. Of course, he was a long time established Democrat, but he was a voice of reason. It's not like it's not like where it is now, where every Democrat hates a Republican and every Republican hates a Democrat. At one time, Cosell nearly ran for United States Senator. And I would say around 1974, they were pushing for him to run for the United States Senate out of New York. One of the prominent senators had retired, and there was this push to draft Howard Cosell. And Cosell could have wound up a senator. In fact, I read a book. One of the first real interesting novels I read when I was a child was Alphabet Jackson. And it was a book from the 70s about a fictional expansion team in the National Football League who goes to the Super Bowl, and one of the players hijacks the plane. And the plane that's going to the Superdome in New Orleans to play the Super Bowl was set a few years into the future, and the book was written like, say, mid 70s for perhaps a time in the late 70s. And the Billy Goats, I think that was the name of the team, they go to the Super Bowl, but on the plane to the Super Bowl, one of their prominent players hijacks the plane, and they all survive the hijacking attempt. But it's being told by Alphabet Jackson, who was a center on the Billy Goats. And one of the things they hypothesize is Pat Summerall is the commissioner of the National Football League, and Howard Cosell is the senator, and Andy Don Meredith owns a chain of hamburgers across the country. So who ends up doing Monday Night Football? I don't know. in that reality. That's the great thing about sports, is you create your own realities. And the author of that book, if you want to look it up, is Jack Olsen, Olsen, Jack Olsen. And that was when I read that book in high school, and it was kind of R-rated, and it had it was an eye-opening book to what really goes on in the National Football League. It talks openly about the drug use of the time and how players would take drugs. And here's the link, by the way, that I was just talking about, to that Howard Cosell video. And it openly talked about how players were using drugs and how, how it could affect a team's performance from one game to the next. And it had some great stories in it. It's a good piece of fiction by Jack Olsen. If you can get it on Amazon, I don't know if you can, but it is a good book to read if you like your fiction. So, in general, I'm kind of pleased with the progress of my sports projects. What's been going on with the HTFL, like I said, with the work situation, I'm trying to get ahead. So, because when I start working, I'm going to fall behind, I know. And I just want to try to get ahead as much as I can. So I'm on most of my projects. I'm on HTFL. I'm about a week ahead. On Grand Slam Wrestling, I'm about half a week ahead. And when the time comes, I just shoot the videos and just go from there. And I will put them up. And I haven't done my Grand Slam Wrestling match of the week for the next week yet, for the event coming up on the 5th. But I should be getting to that in the next day or two. HTFL, I'm already through the week already, almost, with the exception of a couple of games. So let's see here. Gone through a lot of things already, and I'm 16 minutes into the chat. Okay, I'm going to stay here till 8 o'clock at the very least, and hope we get some more visits. But Al, Red Sox fan, is doing a video right now. How you doing, Al? If you see this later. And Al was always like, Al had a couple of great chats over the past couple of days with ID Jester and with Chris from Tabletop Sports Delaware. Some very interesting chats, and they were very fun to look at. Just go through my projects real fast and just give you my thoughts on them. The HDFL, I'm trying to get that project done. Hello, Michael Butler. How are you today, sir? Nice of you to drop in. On the HDFL, I'm going to try to get that done. My goal is to get it done between the holidays and the Super Bowl, provided the NFL season goes without a hitch. And I still have my doubts that's going to happen, though. I got to think that the NFL will run into a problem one way or another as the season progresses, kind of like basketball has, kind of like hockey has had, and baseball has had its problems. Good, thank you. I'm doing well. A little rainy down here in West Central Florida today. We had a nice little round of thunderstorms come through last night, and then again around 1 o'clock in the morning. One of those storms that knocks out your power for a minute or two, and that was kind of interesting. And we've had, just building and building showers. I think this is like kind of off of the hurricane that Texas and Louisiana got. And as it has spread eastward, it has spread moisture down to us, and it has kicked off some more rain. And I think that's why we're getting a lot. Last couple of weeks, you couldn't buy a raindrop, and now all of a sudden the rain is around in abundance. But that's Florida for you. That's Florida weather for you. Okay, where was I? HDFL. Yeah, my goal is to get the games done, and I still have a long way to go. I'm in week 7 now. About to get into week 8 next week, the Labor Day week, and then week 9 for a couple of weeks, and then we go through week 17, and then we have the 15 playoff games. 16 teams make the playoffs. I haven't really thought about what I would do with season 2 if I do a season 2. A lot of players that are in the modern game, like a Pat Mahomes or a Lamar Jackson, they are not in the historical collection yet. And what do we do? What do I do when the new collections come out and they're in there? One of the things I'm thinking of doing is just having a draft and having the worst teams pick up the remaining players, no matter who they play for. Like, for instance, right now, Arizona and Tampa Bay in the HDFL are doing very poorly. And I'm surprised. I thought Tampa Bay would win a few more games than they have. Of course, I'm the Tampa Bay fan, but I play everybody. All the games I play as the home team, no matter who the home team is, I play as the home team. So I missed one game due to operator error, early in the season. I accidentally auto-played a Buffalo-Dallas game. But the goal is for me to play 8 games with everybody, or as close to that as possible. That's the goal. So what I want to do with if I do a season 2, is just have those players that just missed their team or just playing on the Las Vegas team, which is kind of like a catch-all. When am I doing? Bench McNabb. McNabb, I don't think has played all that poorly. But that was kind of a wrap on McNabb all through his career, wasn't it? That McNabb was not. Well, I don't want to turn it into a Rush Limbaugh tirade. He got sacked from his ESPN gig saying it, but it seemed that in the clutch, McNabb could either be very great or very terrible. But there seemed to be no middle ground with Donovan McNabb. What I do with the league is I take the worst team and I make a starter substitution with it. Like I've done that with Arizona the last couple of weeks. Now, the way things work, I might have to do it with Arizona again, might have to do it with Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, I want to make a switch and put Steve DeBergen in favor of Jameis Winston. Hey, Philly is tough. Yes, Philly. Well, the thing about Philadelphia is they've been playing, pro football in Philly for years. And I think that some of these teams or some of these cities that have had teams for years and years and years, like New York, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, San Francisco / Oakland, the Gold Raiders, I think they have a very inherent advantage because of the sample size. You go long enough, you go 50, 60, 70, 80 years, you're going to wind up with, a better sample size, a better chance of getting the best ever defensive back or the best ever wide receiver or the best ever tight end or the best ever lineman or the best ever quarterback. And it's kind of interesting how I let the computer pick all the starters. I don't interfere with that unless, one team is doing poorly and I would like to try something with them. Like I have done with Arizona, because they have. I only do it once a week, and I only do it with the team with the worst record. Like it was Arizona the last couple of weeks. Might be Tampa Bay this week if Arizona beats Pittsburgh. Philly, yeah. Well, Philly is most definitely tough. A tough out. They beat New England earlier in the season in the HDFL, and they'll play each other again later on in the season. Philly might get into the playoffs with Washington and New York. Now that will be a battle when Washington and New York play each other for the first time, which might be the playoffs, might be the conference final, because they probably would meet in the round of 8 against each other. The South is a very porous division where it looks like New Orleans and Carolina, porous conference. That New Orleans and Carolina are the class of that conference, and you got 6 teams that aren't all that great, like Tampa Bay, Atlanta, Indianapolis, Houston, and they'll all be fighting for those 2 spots. I mean, Tampa Bay is off to such a slow start, but they get hot. They might make the playoffs still, even though they're 0-7. I could see a team with a losing record making the playoffs in the South, and so it'll be interesting. If I do HDFL game, I'm not going to do every single game like I did the first season. Probably just like do an early game, like a 1 o'clock game, like in the Eastern Central Time Zone, do a West Coast game, and then do the Monday night game. Doing 256 games is a killer. But I wanted to do all the games the first year, and then if I do a second season, a third season, I just want to do like 3 games a week, or like when there's a Thanksgiving game or a Thursday night game, like to start the season, do maybe 4 games that week and do all the playoff games. How are the Steelers doing? Well, the Steelers are about to play Arizona, and I have that game coming up during the week. Let me see where I am on the Steelers. I'm going to check that out for you right now. Kayfabe, that game will be coming up. Let me see here. I'm in the wrong section. I'm going to go to YouTube Studio. I know it's coming up during the week because I've already played the game, and I'm not giving you the answer. I'm not telling you in advance who won. You're going to have to watch it on during the week. And I'll tell you right now that game will be Pittsburgh and Arizona, September 2nd. September 2nd, which will be Wednesday, and that is scheduled for 7 o'clock Eastern time. 7 o'clock Eastern time. The Steelers are 3-3, and they're going to play Arizona, and Arizona is right now 0-6. So just let you draw your conclusions in terms of what happens there, and I'll have it for you Wednesday night, 7 o'clock. It's a good question, though, Kayfabe. It really is. So, what else I wanted to talk about? Grand Slam Wrestling. I want to do a how-to video on show you how I do the Grand Slam Wrestling, because I have a little formula as to how I book the matches. Well, thank you, Kayfabe, for asking the question about how the Steelers are doing. That was a good question, because I don't think I really spend a lot of time when I do these on how such and such a team is doing if I'm not doing their game. Grand Slam Wrestling, I want to do like how do I book video and show you how I book and how I come up with the champions and just give you my formula and my thinking about that, because it's changed a little bit. It's changed. I've been doing Grand Slam wrestling so long that it's changed several times over the years I've done it. But I think I have found a formula that might work for everybody, and I want to share it with you when I get the chance. So I definitely want to do a how-to video on top of doing a match of the week at some point, probably in the next month. Franchise Hockey Manager, the 79-80 Hartford Whalers. They made the second round of the playoffs, but they lost 6 games to the Islanders, who did not win the Stanley Cup. The St. Louis Blues won the Stanley Cup. They beat Buffalo, so St. Louis knocked out the Islanders in 7 in the semifinal round, and then they beat Buffalo. Now, that's an interesting format the NHL had back then. They had the format where the 4 division winners made the playoffs, and then it was just the next 12 best teams, a 16-team playoff out of 21 NHL teams. That's a great form. They should have kept that. They should have kept that instead of just saying, okay, the best 4 teams in the division. You could have, the 2 worst teams in the league playing in the same division, and the division could have 5 teams in it, and one of them would make the playoffs. That's, that's just kind of silly. I wish the NHL could have done it that way throughout the years until they changed their playoff format more recently to where it's the best 16 teams, and the 4 division winners get those top 4 seeds, and then it's a free-for-all for the last 12 spots. And back then, the first round was a best of 5 and not a best of 7, which I don't know. I kind of think that's interesting too. Why play a best of 7 first round series? Just speed up that first round, get to the crux of cut to the chase, and have your quarterfinals, semifinals, and Stanley Cup Finals be a best of 7. So we will start the Brass Bonanza series again in 2 weeks, September 12th or 13th. OOTP I'm still doing. They had a server issue this morning, but I don't know if it was me or if it was them. I tried going to their website, and it was the only website that I could go to that wasn't working. So I'm kind of thinking it was them, but they got it fixed in short order. So I wound up putting 2 videos, one saying, well, it's not working, and then about an hour later, I came up with a video saying, oh, it's working again now. The Pioneers haven't been doing too well, and I think that's because I haven't been spending a lot of time doing it, not paying attention to detail on that front. What else is going on? Well, that's about it. New projects. I'm not seeing myself doing any new projects for the time being. Maybe we do an off the beaten path. I picked up a miniature golf game for like $6 called Golf It. I'm really into miniature golf these days because I used to play it as a kid. A lot of courses, a lot of mini golf courses here in the Tampa Bay area, like on the beaches and all that. There is a guy on YouTube named Brooks Holt, and he has a girlfriend or a wife named Elisha, Elisha. Oh God, she is gorgeous. She is a gorgeous young lady, and they go all over the country, and they just play miniature golf courses. And it is kind of interesting. And they visited the Tampa Bay area. They've played the courses here in Tampa Bay, in Clearwater, and out on the beach. Don't know if that golf course. There was a golf course, miniature golf course on Central Island, not Central Island, on Treasure Island, not too far from here. I think Wrestling's Finest is the best video game on the market. Yes, most definitely, Arnold. For my money, it is. And of course, they just went to version 3, and version 3 is it's like the Stratomatic of wrestling. They don't do anything. They don't do hypothetical tag teams. Like if Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan teamed in real life, then it's there. But if say you want Andre the Giant team with Ricky Dozen, well, they were in different eras. Ricky Dozen, of course, was the Japanese legend whose career was cut short in the 60s. I think at the hands of some members of the Yakuza. And, you can't have hypothetical tag teams, but any tag team that appeared in real life, you can do. Like, like if you just saw my Okerlund Cup video, the British Bulldogs are my world champs. That was a real team. That was a real team that existed. But they don't do hypothetical tag teams, and they don't do 6-man tag teams. And I can understand the reasoning behind this, because you want to try to keep it somewhat realistic. I know wrestling is not supposed to be realistic, but I always like Tom Vogel's approach to how he does the game, and just tries to keep a semblance of realism to it, where other games like your Fire Pro Wrestling, or I got my start with the wrestling games with Wrestling Rampage, which is an old Lance Hafner game. And in Hafner, you could do hypothetical 6-man tags or 8-man tags or 16-man tags if you wanted to do it. But if you did it that way, then the matches would take much longer. Like a tag team match could go an hour, but a singles match, you would be hard-pressed to go 30 minutes. But in Wrestling's Finest, you could have a singles match go 60 minutes, go 80, 90 minutes if you had no time limit. So go check out Tom Vogel's videos. I truly recommend them to all of you. He just did a hypothetical card using the old Georgia Championship Wrestling, and something happened at the very end of that card that was kind of interesting. I won't spoil it for him, but of course that was back in the days when the Georgia Wrestling used to be on WTBS, which I grew up on. And they would run. The thing about living in the Tampa-St. Pete area is they would run Georgia Wrestling from 6 to 8 on WTBS, and they also ran Florida Wrestling on the independent station here in Tampa, 44, from 7 to 8, which means Gordon Soley was on 2 different channels at the same time. Not too many people in television have ever been on 2 channels at once prior to, let's say, the current days of infomercials. Maybe Kurt Gowdy. Maybe Kurt Gowdy did, NCAA basketball on NBC and did American Sportsman on ABC at the same time during the winter. But I'm hard-pressed to think of television personalities being on 2 different channels at the same time. And the only 2 I could think of, really, are Gordon and Kurt Gowdy. So there's that. See, Al Red Sox fan told a fart story on his live stream. I'm going to tell you one of mine, okay? And I won't get too disgusting, but as Sophia Petrillo says on the Golden Girls, picture it. I'm in Port Canaveral with my mother and friends of hers, and they're all going on a gambling junket out to Port Canaveral. Now, if you want to go gambling in the Tampa Bay area, the Seminole Hard Rock is closer. And of course, this is back before COVID happened. So I go to Port Canaveral with my mom and her friends, because they're seniors, and we get to Port Canaveral. By the way, getting out to the east coast of Florida nowadays very easy. You don't have to go through Orlando. You just go on a couple of toll roads, and you can get out there much faster than before. If you ever traveled in Central Florida, let's see what we got here. Version 3 is great. Oh yeah, absolutely, Arnold. It is fantastic. Are you on the Delphi boards, Arnold? Would I know your handle if you had mentioned it on here? I'll wait for that. I'll tell my story real fast. So we had a good time. Of course, when you go to gamble, there's slot machines all around, and of course you're going to lose, and we lost. And we're waiting to get off the boat and get back on dry land. And I'm waiting in line with my mom. And gas escapes me, and I'm trying to be very, very discreet about it, but it keeps slipping out, sleeping out. Just trying. He's just looking around, and you're like, oh, I don't know who did that. But the guy next to me in line just figures it out real quick. I did it. You're like, yeah. And I admit to it, and I said, well, I wouldn't have admitted to it if I were you. And I'm like, what else was I going to do? Just, there are times in our lives when we're going to have bad gas. And that was one of those times for me at Port Canaveral, Florida. And we were scheduled to go in September, but this was 2017, and this was the year that Florida got hit by all the hurricanes, Irma being the biggest. And then a couple of weeks later, they had a storm in the Atlantic, and they postponed the trip because of the hurricane. I think the hurricane was Michelle. I think it was the one that wound up hitting Puerto Rico and then rode up the Atlantic, and I don't think it hit Bermuda, and that was it. But because of that, we waited, and it was the day we went was the first game of the 2017 World Series that Houston beat the Dodgers in. So that's how I remember things. I can remember sporting events, and if something in my life happened during a sporting event, then I can remember it. Like the night I graduated high school in Largo, Florida in 1989, I could remember it was the second game of the NBA Finals, and it was a Thursday night. June 8th, 1989. And I can remember that because I could cross-reference it. I could always cross-reference these things with sporting events. And I was like, well, I hope I get back home in time to watch game 2 of the NBA Finals. Everybody was thinking, like, what? You should be celebrating. But that's how I remember things. That's how I remember things from my youth, is through the sporting events of my youth. And of course, now, the way sports is going, are people that are going to be like, my age when I went to high school, 18, they're going to remember that something and something and something happened in their life on the day of a sporting event? Probably not. Probably not. Wrestling 3, version 3 is great. Yes, it is. And let's see, it is now 7:35, so I'll be with you 25 minutes. So we're getting down to the last cards, down and dirty. Red Sox fan doing his Stratomatic tournament, which is fantastic. I love that he has that little chroma key scoreboard up top when he does his games. If he could ever figure out how to lose the green background and find a way to just keep the score up, that would be kind of interesting. Technically, Uncle Ron Juckett, I watch his baseball games pretty frequently. Let's just see what we got here. Burns with Pezic 2 should be great. How much longer can the Rays hold off the Yankees? Where's your miniature? I don't have a miniature golf handicap. I didn't play that much to have one. I guess my handicap is myself. And Kayfabe's talking about how I have two shooters fighting for the world title in GSW right now, Farmer Burns and John Pezic. Look those names up in Wikipedia. They were all-time legends, and because they could really shoot, they're rated way higher than anybody else in GSW or the Wrestling's Finest game. The shooters are all rated like 270. And usually a good wrestler in Wrestling's Finest or a good team is like 200 to 225. But the shooters are way over that, 270. And all the time I've been playing GSW, I've never had a shooter not be world champion. It was Farmer Gotch, and then it was Pezic, and then it was Ed Stranko Lewis for a while, and then Farmer Burns. So what I'm trying to do by bringing Pezic in is to try to retire the shooters. And Pezic just wants to be my script is Pezic just wants to be world champion again so he can retire again. And I got Ric Flair in his corner. And I eventually want to get it to where the world champion of GSW is a non-shooter. Because the shooters just dominate. Yes, it is. I go to the Delphi Forum and watch Tommy Vogel's video. Oh, yeah. Tom's great. Tom's great at what he does. And like I said, I really think that for what he does, I think it's a great game. I think it's one of the great wrestling games out there. I know with Fire Pro, you get a bunch of, it's a much more of a graphical experience, but I don't think the game engine they have is all that great or all that realistic. But with Tommy, it's like the Stratomatic of wrestling. That's what I like to call it. I never played Stratomatic baseball. One of these days, I got to get around to that before my life's over with. Getting back to Tommy's questions, how much longer can the Rays hold off the Yankees? The Rays, oh my God. I really haven't been following baseball all that much because sports these days is like a blur, especially to me. I know the Rays just swept Miami this series. By the way, all these teams losing games to COVID. How are they gonna finish the season? I know the Oakland A's just lost a game today because one of their players tested positive for COVID. I'm gonna ask Siri something. What's the standings in the American League East? I'm gonna ask Siri a question.
The Red Sox are in last place in the AL East right now with a record of 12-22.
Okay, well, I wasn't asking about the Red Sox. The Rays are up 4 games on the Yankees, and they just swept Miami this weekend. But I don't know how they're going to finish the season off with all these teams losing games. Are they just going to when the first teams get to 60 games, they're just going to say, okay, you're all cut off. Okay, that was Arnold's last post. I thought somebody else had posted, and that's why I looked at it again. Can the Rays hold off the Yankees? I think so, but this is going to be a screwy playoff format that Major League Baseball has, and of course, due to COVID, what choice do they have? Very little. They're going to have 16 teams make the playoffs, and they have it so if you finish first or second, that's automatic bid. It's an automatic trip to the playoffs, and then the top 2 teams who did not finish first and second, the 7th and 8th teams. So you could have 4 teams from one division. They will also make the playoffs. So this is going to be screwy, and the first round is going to be a best 2 out of 3. So the Rays lose 2 games in their first round. They're done. They're done for the season. And you could possibly have a losing team with a losing record make the World Series, quite possibly, especially in baseball where, the best team loses 60 games during a normal season, 162 games. You could have a team that's high seeded and lose a first round series if it's best 2 out of 3. Don't know how baseball's, you could wind up like with a team like, say, who's 500 right now? Like Toronto. I'll say Toronto Blue Jays. You could see Toronto get hot and go to the World Series, and they could win, not even half their games. So it's really going to be wacky how the World Series tournament's going to be held. Now, the NFL did this in 1982. They had 16 teams out of 28 make the playoffs, and it was single elimination. And I think the team that was the Cinderella that year was the New York Jets. They had to win 2 playoff games on the road, and then they lost to Miami, and Miami made it to the Super Bowl that year, and they lost to the Redskins. And I'm trying to think. Okay, Dallas was the 2 seed, I think, that year. There were no surprises in the NFC that year. That's when Danny White was leading Dallas out of Arizona State, and that was a couple of years after Roger Staubach had retired. And there were no surprises in the NFC, but the Jets had to win, I think, like 2 games, and I don't remember what seed they were. Just off the top of my head, I'm thinking they were like 5th or 6th. And they beat Cincinnati, and they beat the Raiders, and they made it all the way to the round of 4, and then they got beat by Miami in a rainstorm at the Orange Bowl. And then Miami played the Redskins tough in that Super Bowl, and I always liked it when they had the championship games in the Super Bowl just 1 week apart. And I always thought that kind of added an element of, it's just an ordinary game, even though it's the Super Bowl. I always liked it when there was that 1 week rest instead of 2. Although nowadays teams have those 2 weeks off, and you get good Super Bowl games. The Super Bowl game between the 49ers and Chiefs earlier this year was a very good game until the very end, and the Chiefs made a nice comeback to win that. How I think Tom Brady will do, if anybody's asking? I don't know. I kind of have my feeling that Brady will get hurt. Now, I don't want him to get hurt because I'm a Buccaneer fan, but I have a feeling that when you trade for somebody like Brady, and Brady is the best quarterback of all time, I will grant you that things could go wrong. And I was very surprised that the Buccaneers would trade for him. But he'll have his last hurrah. Kayfabe, what are you saying? That's nuts. Yes, yeah, you're right. The NFL could easily shut down by COVID. Yeah, yeah. You know, like I said, college football, they should have been having their first week this week, and you should be seeing the first few games of the college football season, and that didn't happen. And I think Labor Day weekend, they're going to play a very limited schedule. Of course, you got the Big Ten and the Pac-12 already saying they're not playing. Of course, the Big Ten is actually like the Big 14 nowadays because you got 14 teams on it. Isn't that weird how the Big Ten has 14 teams and the Big 12 has, 10? And they never thought about changing their name. Like the Big 12 could have been the Southwest 10, or they could have brought some teams that used to play in the old Southwest Conference in and make that a bigger conference. And the Big Ten, of course, now, you got 14 teams. You got Penn State, you got Maryland, you got Rutgers, and you got Nebraska. Missed the days of the old Big Ten. That was a good conference. And the SEC's playing, but they're just going to play. The bowl season is going to be crazy because you're going to have conferences not fielding teams, so bowl games will have to be canceled. What are they going to do? They're going to put like a 3-9 team against a 4-8 team in some of these bowls? No, the fans won't watch that. So let's see what else is going on. So college football will be crazy. I kind of have my doubts they'll be able to make it through their season. Braves are playing the Phillies on Sunday Night Baseball. And ESPN's already hawking fantasy football. Like I said, I have my doubts they're going to make it through a season without COVID being a factor in it. Or maybe something happens in the political realm that makes them stop. With the way this election season has gone, I mean, who's to say? Who's to say something else happens that doesn't really throw things for a loop? They'll say COVID comes back, or COVID will really come back. And just looking on, let's see if anything else is going. Any of you follow Big Brother, the Big Brother reality show? That's been I haven't really had a chance to follow that either. They're doing an all-star season, and a lot of the first people gone were, the older players like Keisha and Janelle. Janelle, of course, the 2 years she played originally back in the aughts, she was a great player. But the last 2 times she's appeared, she hasn't done too well. And she got kicked out third this year. Big Brother's the only real reality show I follow these days anyway. And, but the problem with Big Brother is they do things with the show they have already done. Like this year they did All-Stars. Now, I don't blame them for doing All-Stars because I'm sure COVID Janelle is gone. Thank you. She got kicked out a couple of nights ago, right? And even the All-Stars they've done once before. They did it back in 2006. And what was I going to say? Yeah, and my problem with Big Brother in recent years is everything that they have done in terms of casting twists they've already done before. And I cut them some slack this year because of COVID. I think they just grabbed a bunch of the old house guests that were living in California and gave them another shot, like Kesar and a lot of the newbies. But I'd be happy if they make it through the season without an incident. And so far, so good in terms of that. They've almost played a whole month now. And their season ends in late October, just right before the elections. That'll be kind of interesting to put them back in reality. Right before the election takes place on November 3rd. So, let's see now. I've been flapping my guns here for 50 minutes. Anybody else got something they want to throw into the forum here? We'll be in here for about 10 more minutes. I have to go to the DMV here tomorrow. Another thing that goes on because of COVID is that my driver's license is going to expire in a week. So I had to set the appointment for getting it renewed, and I have to be there in person because they want to take an eye test and so forth. I had to set it up like a month and a half in advance because normally Pinellas County has a whole bunch more DMV centers across the county. And Pinellas County is the county in Florida that has Clearwater and St. Petersburg. Tampa's in another county, that's Hillsborough. And of course, Tampa is where most of the teams play, except the Rays, who play at Tropicana Field, St. Pete, and will be doing so at least a few more years, they hope. But I had to set this up like you have to set it up like weeks in advance. Like I had to set up doing this in time, like in mid-July, because everything's crazy because of COVID, and I have to wear the mask. Pinellas County, that's a mandate. It's not a mandate for all of Florida, but if you go down the line of governments, you always run into a local government or a county government or a city government where they tell you, hey, you better wear your mask. So if you go to any business in Pinellas County, like Walmart or the DMV or the bank, you have to wear a mask. And that's what I'm going to be doing. And that'll be interesting tomorrow. And you have to, rearrange your life around the, because you got to go in the middle of the day and you can't really do anything in the middle of the day other than go to the DMV and come back. So that'll be kind of interesting. I have that to look forward to 10 o'clock tomorrow. Danny is playing good. Danny Donato, yeah. Well, Danny Donato always played good. Didn't she make a deep run in the year Evil Dick quit? Evil Dick Donato. I think she didn't. Danny went, I'd say like top 6. That was the year that the redhead won, Rachel Riley, right? I think she had a very good run that year. Danny Donato did. So she knows how to play the game. The election results could go on till January. Yeah, and then if they can't find a winner, then the Speaker of the House becomes an acting president. And depending on how that goes, that could be controversy. So not really looking forward to the next few months. Put it to you that way. It's going to be painful every day. Listen to these politicians. They'll blame each other for what's going on. What happened to the day in politics when you took responsibility for your own actions and you didn't blame the other guy for what he didn't do? And I miss those days. And it seemed that when I was a kid, those days were around. And, people were a lot more civilized back then. There's that too. Politically, I mean, I remember when Reagan and Mondale debated in '84, and Reagan made a nice little joke about Mondale's age. You don't see that anymore. Yes, I think I am correct. Yeah. About Danny Donato. Yeah, I think Danny Donato made a deep run in 13, so season 13. So that's not surprising me. She's doing well. I'm just kind of wondering if one of the two winners might win the season of Big Brother, either Ian Terry or Nicole Franzel. We had the civil society. Yeah, we did. We had a civil society, and for one reason or another, and don't tell me it's because of the guy who's president now, because I think things were really starting to go downhill more beyond him. I think a lot of this all started when we had a president that was impeached 20 some odd years ago, and the Democrats just said, we're keeping him. I think there was a lot of that too, that has bled into what is going on now in 2020. But that's just my personal opinion. Just my personal opinion. You have your own, and you're welcome to it. But if you ask me, I think that's when it all got started. I think when you have leaders of our country lying about things as trivial as sexual relationships, that I think it led to the downfall of the country. And a lot of people could attribute what's been going on other ways, and they're welcome to those opinions. It's just, from where I sit, from where I sit and from where I sat growing up through the 80s and 90s and aughts and 20 teens and now the 2020s, that's what I think happened. Am I wrong? I probably am. Don't ever believe that my opinion is always going to be 100% correct, because it isn't. I agree. I think Obama started it. No, like I said, I think it goes back farther than Obama. I think it goes back to 3 incidents. The Clinton impeachment, the 2000 elections, where Gore probably won, but both sides lawyered up and they decided that he didn't win, and 9/11. I think those 3 things happening in very short order in our society changed American society forever. And I don't think we have ever recovered from those 3 incidents. And you see it manifest now with a president that half the country loves and half the country despises. And how did we get to that, by the way? I think that had a lot to do with it. I think that had a lot to do with it. Those 3 incidents, Clinton impeachment, the 2000 elections that hung on Florida forever and ever. And by the way, if it wasn't for 2000, they'd be talking about the 2004 election and all the reported chicanery that went on in the Bush-Kerry election in Ohio. Don't forget that. But I put that kind of down the list. I think those 3 incidents changed the country. The Clinton impeachment, 2000 elections, 9/11. I think something happened among those 3 things that changed the country forever. But that, like I said, that's just my opinion. Your opinion can be totally different, and I welcome you to it. Sooner or later, we're going to have to figure out a way to bring this country back together again. And, better we have that conversation sooner rather than later. But that's just me. So, folks, I think I'm going to bail. It's 7:56. And like I said, I really didn't talk about this chat and advertise this chat all that much. So I'm not surprised we had a few drop by. So I'm going to wish everybody a pleasant good evening. Godspeed and God bless. Those of you watching on tape, you should have been here. No, I'm kidding. And we'll do it again soon. Look for our next live chat to be somewhere around September 12th or 13th. I'll have to figure out what my work schedule and other things will allow me to do. Maybe we do it like early the week after the 12th or the 13th, the weekend of the 12th or the 13th. I don't know. We'll figure it out, and I will advertise it on all the other games I do, okay? Take care. It was fun. Oh, I had fun doing it. I always have fun doing these. And Godspeed and God bless everybody, wherever you are, whenever you see this, either now or in the year 2525. Take care of each other. And bye-bye for now, everybody.